It starts with a single sentence that feels like a thunderclap. Alberto Puig, the man who once pulled Marquez's strings at Honda, looks at Ducati's empire and mutters, "They were lucky to have him winning so many races." Lucky. That word bounces off every garage wall like shrapnel. Reporters lean forward, engineers look away. Old loyalties ache. Because Puig didn't say fast, he didn't say brilliant. He said lucky. The irony slices deep. The architect of Honda's golden era now standing outside the cathedral he helped build, watching the new gods pray to a rider he once called family. And that rider, Marc Márquez, just took Ducati to a 7th world title, wrapping it with 5 rounds to spare at Motegi, his 11th Grand Prix win of the season. 14 sprint wins, a 175-point lead before the Indonesian crash that sidelined him. Puig's comment wasn't analysis. It was confession. It was a man watching history erase him and trying to sound neutral. Ducati's luck wasn't divine. It was human, a 6-year wound stitched with scar tissue and vengeance. Question for the paddock. When the man who made the legend calls the legend luck, is that honesty or bitterness dressed as philosophy? Drop it in the comments. 2023 ended like a broken marriage. Honda's halls were quiet, except for the sound of one man packing up his legacy. Marc Márquez left after 11 years, 6 world titles, 59 MotoGP wins, and a body that had paid the price for their engineering stubbornness. 4 surgeries, 108 crashes since Jerez 2020, a right arm that became a battlefield. Puig knew it was over the moment Marc walked into Gresini's satellite garage in 2024. The test lap said what press releases couldn't. The old rhythm was back. Marquez wasn't chasing recovery anymore. He was hunting. The next season, Ducati gave him the GP25 factory bike, and the sport quietly braced itself. On paper, Ducati didn't need saving. They already had Pecco Bagnaia, a double world champion. But under the surface, things were rotting. The GP25's new ride height device changed balance and braking character. Bagnaia wrestled with it all year. Marc? He didn't wrestle. He reprogrammed it. The winter tests told the story. Catalunya, Jerez, Sepang. Marquez didn't test, he dissected. He made the engineers work backwards from feel instead of data. Ducati's crew called him the calibrator. Every time he gave feedback, the telemetry agreed within 2 laps. By the time the Thai GP opened the season, the paddock could feel something ugly building. The veterans sensed it. Lorenzo called it 2019 energy. Pedrosa called it the chameleon's final form. Bagnaia's first weekends looked like slow-motion implosions. A 3rd in Thailand, strangled behind Quartararo in Jerez, only dominant once in Japan. Marquez, meanwhile, rode the same motorcycle like it had been custom-grown in his DNA. By the 5th round, he had 3 wins and 2 second places. The MotoGP points chart looked like a graph someone forgot to scale. Ducati, who once feared chaos, now feared dependence. Question: did Ducati build a monster, or did the monster build Ducati? Comment what you think made the red machine unstoppable. The 2025 campaign didn't open under floodlights in Qatar. It began in Thailand. Blistering heat, riders melting, tension humming like machinery. New era, same problem for everyone else. A red blur with the number 93. Marc Márquez came out swinging, not testing the waters, but diving headfirst into war. He left Buriram with a victory that looked surgical, a warning that the year wasn't going to be democratic. Next stop, Austin. The track that used to belong to him entirely, 11 poles, 7 wins, was waiting. The rain turned qualifying into roulette, yet Marc took front row anyway. On Sunday, he led from lights out until lap 10 when the GP25's rear stepped out mid-corner. The slide threw him off balance, the crash violent, mud flying. Most riders would have rolled, cursed, and disappeared into the medical truck. He dragged the Ducati upright, kicked it back to life, and still finished 12th. That wasn't recovery. That was insult made into art. Then came Jerez, the chaos nobody saw coming. Running 3rd behind Fabio Quartararo, he lost the front in turn 9. The bike cartwheeled into the gravel. He sprinted to it, slammed it into neutral, remounted, the carbon fairing hanging like torn armor. He finished 14th. 4 points. Superpowers? No. Just the original definition of a racer. Someone too stubborn to die on the ground. Each weekend felt like proof of concept. He didn't need perfection, he needed inevitability. Japan was pure domination. Sprint win, main win, title mathematically sealed with 5 rounds still to burn. Mandalika, Indonesia, provided the tragedy. Lap 1, turn 7, Bezzecchi's Aprilia clipped him. Shoulder fracture, ligament damage, and suddenly the paddock felt colder. Ducati announced surgery in Madrid. Marc's title already done, but his season forced into pause. Australia followed, then Malaysia, races that played out like open rehearsals in his absence. Riders sniffed opportunity, but the air felt hollow. Without Marc, the pace chart looked mortal again. Portimao would come next, a late-season outpost where his presence was missed even more. The fans understood what the statistics couldn't. Dominance is exciting only when it's active. When the king's in surgery, everyone else is just borrowing glory. Across these rounds, the numbers stayed ridiculous. 11 Grand Prix victories, 14 sprint wins, 512 total points by the time he stopped. Average qualifying deficit to second place? 0.198 seconds. Tire life variance across stints? Lower than any other Ducati rider by 8%. The GP25 wasn't suddenly divine. It was interpreted by a man who knew how to turn chaos into compliance. Each race became a psychological exhibition. Rivals tried different setups, different compounds, different prayer forms. Nothing worked. Acosta's flashes, Bezzecchi's counterpunches, Bagnaia's occasional brilliance, all useful for narrative but irrelevant to the arithmetic of domination. Ducati's wall filled with graphs that looked like heartbeats. Marc's lines smooth, everyone else's erratic. When Puig later said Ducati was lucky, maybe he was remembering this sequence. The relentless rhythm of a man who didn't just win, but rewrote the definition of fight. The luck wasn't in Ducati finding him. It was in the rest surviving him. Question for the paddock. If a man can crash, remount, and still score while leading a championship, he's already won. Is that skill, madness, or the proof that MotoGP physics bend for one name only? Comment your call and hit subscribe before the next autopsy. The 2025 season exposed more than it entertained. Honda collapsed spiritually. KTM learned that youth and courage mean nothing without experience. Aprilia folded under internal chaos. Jorge Martin's mid-season announcement to leave left the garage divided. And Pecco Bagnaia? His confidence cracked under the weight of comparison. Imagine being a 2-time champion and watching your teammate bend the same bike into legend form. Bagnaia's GP25 wasn't a bad machine. It just wasn't his language anymore. He fought wheel spin issues, complained about unpredictable rear traction, and often said, "It doesn't tell me what it's doing." Marquez didn't wait for it to talk. He told it what to do. By mid-season, the Ducati garage was visibly split. One half orbiting around Marc's data, the other around Pecco's ego. You could sense the tension in team briefings, the unspoken truth that one rider was leading a revolution while the other was fighting ghosts. Meanwhile, Honda's disaster became biblical. Joan Mir and Luca Marini scraped points. Johan Zarco and LCR scored a few top 10s, but spent more time describing lack of front confidence than strategy. Puig, for all his experience, watched the factory he represented become a case study in inertia. His statement about luck now sounded like therapy. Because if Ducati's success was luck, then Honda's failure wasn't mismanagement. It was fate. And that's the lie professionals tell themselves to sleep. Technically, Ducati's edge came from one truth: feedback loop. Marc gave data that others couldn't replicate. Engineers found that every suggestion he made about balance translated into actual lap time improvement. That's not intuition. That's calibration from years of suffering through flawed Hondas. He turned trauma into telemetry. When he crashed in Indonesia, Ducati panicked quietly. They could build bikes forever, but they couldn't build another Marc Márquez. Even in recovery, he was dictating development. Remote briefings, voice notes about corner entry data. That's not luck. That's empire maintenance. So when Puig says lucky, what he's really saying is, we had no idea how to keep him. Question: is losing Marc Márquez a sporting error or a corporate crime? Should Honda ever be forgiven for wasting a golden era? Drop your judgment below, don't hold back. Now that the dust has settled and the shoulder healed, the truth stands naked. Ducati weren't lucky. They were ready. Luck is when chaos benefits you by chance. Preparedness is when chaos obeys your command. Marquez turned Ducati's preparation into tyranny. The 2025 Ducati GP25 wasn't revolutionary. Slightly lighter crankshaft, narrower fairing, refined ride height control. On paper, marginal. On track, under Marc, unstoppable. He used less tire, less fuel, less drama. His telemetry looked like a heart monitor of a sleeping predator. Honda engineers, watching from afar, admitted privately that the GP25's success was less mechanical and more interpretative. They couldn't replicate the same lap time improvement without his feedback. Puig's lucky comment aged poorly. Every headline ran it, every fan turned it into a meme, every rider gritted their teeth. But deep down, he wasn't wrong, just incomplete. Ducati was lucky. Lucky that their timing aligned with a man who refused to die in silence. Lucky that when he left Honda, he still had enough hate left to become history's reminder that pain and purpose are the same fuel. That's not fortune. That's fire management. The legacy question looms larger than stats. 7 world titles, tying him with Rossi and Agostini's shadows hovering close. 25 total wins for Ducati across 2 seasons. 14 sprint wins. 512 points in 1 campaign. These aren't numbers, they're obituaries for doubt. So when Puig said Ducati was lucky, he was accidentally right. Not about Ducati, but about himself. Because Honda had been luckier than anyone for a decade. They had a once-in-a-century rider and let politics, ego, and engineering arrogance drive him away. That's not just bad management, that's tragedy. Marquez turned Ducati into the Red Storm. His crash in Mandalika only made the myth bigger. The wounded champion, the surgeon's knife, the silence before the next war. The question now isn't whether Ducati can survive without him for 2 races. It's whether anyone else can survive in a sport he still defines. Was this the year Marquez proved he's bigger than any factory? Did Ducati build a god or borrow one temporarily? And when Puig said lucky, did he actually mean cursed? Cursed to remember what greatness once felt like. Drop your verdict in the comments. The fire doesn't stop here. From now, where does this put them? The time will tell us. Comment below. Subscribe for more savage breakdowns. The next war is already loading.